Welcome back to the Honest Brew podcast, unfiltered conversations on business growth. So is it just me, or did 2025 already feel like you got hit with a ton of bricks? I don't know. Let us know in the comments. But we spent all of December planning, goal setting, vision boarding, our word of the year. And now we're in it, and reality is hitting different. Today, we're talking about what to do when your plans meet real life and real life wins. Sometimes that is a good thing. When your goals aren't hitting you the way you expected, when you're already feeling overwhelmed, and when life is, well, heavy because you're feeling like this right now. You're not alone. And there's actually strategic ways to navigate this without burning it all down. So grab your cup of coffee or tea, whatever keeps you sane. All right, let's brew some truth. So, ladies, how are you feeling now that we're in 2026 and all that great stuff you had down waiting for 2026 to happen?
Have learned a lot, honestly. I always had this expectation for any year that, like, as soon as I'm back in office, girl, you're hitting the ground running. You are steamrolling ahead. Like, you are working, which, if you listen to our other podcast about Girl Boss, me having that mentality makes sense as someone who's a recovered type A perfectionist overachiever. And I feel like I like to give myself the first quarter, especially January, to get my life together, just to like understand like the goals I set probably during that weird week in between Christmas and New Year's. Like, do I even still want to do that now that I'm back into the flow with clients, that I'm back into a flow of like some health appointments, my family, all of that stuff, ensuring that it's still aligning, even though there have been pivots in my life. I'm planning my wedding. And that was something that wasn't in my business goals, which means things needed to adjust for me. And so overall, I am happy because I understand what lane I want to be in.
I love giving yourself January to sort it out, because we're always in such a rush to like, oh, it's the new year. And this is like psychological part of it that, you just have to like jump in and like start running right away. And one of the things that I like to do at the beginning of the year, especially if I feel like it's chaotic, is to realign myself with like my values. Is what I are the goals that I set, are those realistic?
Mm-hmm.
And, just looking at the way that I run my business, and is the process working for me, not just like as a business person, but like in my life as well. So it's just like really realigning myself to grounding myself.
Mm-hmm.
I know who I am, but am I actually practicing those values?
I think that you ladies are pointing beautifully to the first step in what can cure this feeling you are feeling right now, which is stop and assess. You know that saying, like, don't make big decisions in these moments.
Do
Yeah.
It's a
not.
stop and assess moment is what it is, because when we make big decisions in those moments of overwhelm, those are the worst decisions we ever make in our lives. So yeah, don't panic or pivot, just stop and assess. And I think that's a really important thing, especially because you think of like that new year coming in. This is like it's like one of those moments of change in life, right? Every year we have this huge moment of change going into that new year. And so it's like we got to find, so poetically put by Monique, our grounding, and get our footing, get our stability. Going in out of that moment, I want to move us towards like the assessment side of that.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's different ways or different paths of how to assess. Here, I'll give an example because it's the easiest way to. Is it like, you kind of like bucket different items, and is it like time management, or is it I'm super unorganized? Is it the platforms that I'm using are no longer working for me? And so I think there are different ways that you can assess like holistically what's going on. And like, I mean, I'm such a visual person that I actually when I get stuck or overwhelmed, I make lists, right? I have journal, and I actually make buckets. Like I'll say a 3-column page and say time, organization, process. And I write the challenges that are happening inside of each one of those buckets. And then just I can assess it more like holistically, but looking at them at the same time. For me, that really works, but I'm a very visual person, so I guess that makes sense. But really, lists help.
For me, it's more of a feeling. If I'm getting really frustrated or like procrastinating, that makes me stop and think, do I really want to do this right now? It doesn't mean like I'll never do it again. It might just be like, instead of trying to achieve this in Q1, I'm going to push it to Q2. Because a big mistake I did is I would set big goals, but I wouldn't work backwards to making those goals smaller. So I have my structure of like, this is what to do in a week. This is what to do in a month. And that is something I do more of now and recommend to people because it gives you space for life to happen. I remember being so rigid and then an inconvenience would happen and I would be so upset. And it's because I'm outside of my routine. It disrupted these things. And I had to learn to let go of control because we can have the goal, we can have the structure, just have it be flexible. And at the end of the day, our business is just a facet of who we are and what we do. There needs to be room for life to happen. Otherwise, what's the point of doing the business then?
Exactly. Just might as well just be under somebody else's rule.
Mm-hmm.
What I hear on both of yours is prioritizing and permission. And I think both of those are really important because when we are in that place of overwhelm, we're putting typically a lot of extra stuff in our space that actually shouldn't even be there. So it's, we either dismiss it, move it to the next, next week, next quarter, whatever. I kind of like the system of the way of prioritizing, which is like urgent, important, important, not urgent, urgent, not important, or neither. And my husband taught me that one a long time ago, and it really helped me just kind of judge things because I always felt like everything was so muddy and to everything was important to me. And so it really like helped me get out of that box. Which is weirdly because it isn't a box that you do that. Okay, anyway. So from there, we wanted to move then to a place of streamlining, which we're already kind of going into. Like these methods bring us into a streamlining state. But when it comes to streamlining, I kind of look at a few different things when it comes to streamlining. One is, as far as now, me personally with my company, I have a team. So streamlining to me is like what needs to go to them and what am I keeping over here too much? But also, what is the most important thing that's going to keep my business moving forward to the goals that I'm wanting to
Yes.
move towards? And we can get very muddled. Like I said, we can sit in the muddle a little bit on what that actually looks like. But once we have that assessment, that gives us clarity to how to move forward here. And then we move it, then it's into a place of time. Determining because we love to plan it like we are limitless in our days and time. But remember, time also is a context. We have a lot of story around time. So, ladies, what do you think on that?
Yeah, I love love the word streamlining. I'm sure Sarah does too. But I found one of the methods that I use to streamline is this is not rocket science, but it definitely works for me. It's grouping like tasks together. So for example, that just might mean that like I have 3 proposals to do that week. And I'm in that headspace of writing a proposal. So I'm going to do all 3 of them, or at least parts of, I might complete one and start another one in that same time period. So if I have on my calendar for the week from 9 to 12, I'm going to work on proposals. It's just keeps that kind of thinking compartmentalized into that one time frame, and I'm more productive in it because I'm in that headspace. Now, sometimes I know I need to work on proposals, but my mind naturally wants to design at that moment. And so if that does happen, I allow myself to work on the design as long as I swap the proposal time period with another day. So I still chunk the light together. And for me, that really helps to, streamline my process.
It's beautiful.
I mean, that's why we became entrepreneurs, to have that freedom over our time and how much money we make. For me, something I definitely want to get better at this year is having that day to kind of map out what I want to achieve within a week. That would just will help limit my decision making during the week. So I'm not waking up being like, what do I want to do for like my business? Because client work is always easy. Like that's the easiest work in my eyes, because I just log on and do. And that's what I want to do for Indigo Elephant this year is dream big, have my big juicy goals, but work backwards so that I can actually see it being achieved over time, instead of getting to like say 2027 and being like, I didn't do shit. When it's like, no girl, you did a lot. You may not have hit the big goal, but look at all these other things you achieved.
I actually just had a coaching call with a client this morning where I told her that she really needs to have a journal that's dedicated to the things that she has accomplished. Because we have a tendency to go to zero in these moments, especially in overwhelm. And when we're looking at all the things we want to do and it's not getting done and whatever, we will so quickly forget the fact of all the things that we actually have accomplished. Because in our calls, when she goes to that mode, all of a sudden she's more motivated, we're clearer. And, and she has a neurodivergent brain like me too. So I'm not saying, but I think that that's helpful even for people who aren't neurodivergent, that is just, I think as women, we just naturally are very much in this place of where we want to say we're never enough, like we want to like down ourselves and just like we're not reaching it, whatever, because we can get wrapped up in our assumptions, right? And I think that's because we're beautifully emotional people by nature, and that's a good thing, but we have to make sure that we wield our gifts the right way. And so with that said, I think that that is just maybe a really good action step for people that are listening. Start that journal today, start the journal, start writing down. And what I told her about it was, it's not just about writing it down. It's when you're in this moment of overwhelm, now it's time to open that book and look at it, because we get all sorts of stories and survival mechanisms going on when we are in these overwhelm moments. Okay, next step in this, now we're streamlined. Now we need to adjust our plan to reality. So we have all these beautiful things, and Sarah's already been pointing to this because she's our operations person. But it's what adjustments can you make? So you're pointing, yes, I could move something to second quarter, but what would shift your original plan where you still feel satisfied? You're still satisfied with how you're moving forward. Any ideas around that? And I'm sure Sarah, she looks like she's brimming. The steam is coming
She's
out
bursting.
of her head.
I have so many thoughts, guys. To me, I like Monique's reminder of like the flexibility in our schedule. But I think even bigger than that is, I really believe the easy part can be the dreaming of your goals, the strategizing. But right when we start to take action, that's when that little voice starts to rear its head. Or like that's when little fears or maybe old limiting beliefs come up. And it's like, how do you keep moving forward while still being to honor like those human moments? And I feel like the changes that can happen with that is how you are showing up. Like, what are you consuming? What is your mindset like? Like really trying to shift like how your energy is showing up, because that is a journey I'm on. And then that often means making decisions differently, investing in things differently, asking for help, which I feel like a lot of this has been like audit your time, audit your life. And this also goes to auditing what you're investing in. Like, do you need to change a platform? It is very easy to migrate now. So it might be having to make that shift. It could be simply upgrading to the bigger plan because you don't have to worry about something. It could be hiring for the first time because you're like, I don't even want to manage the tool that does this. I need someone else to do it. Exploring what that looks like. It could also look like having to fire someone and then replace them. It could be putting an offer to rest and doing something new. So it really is a energy shift, and we don't really realize these fears or things are operating until we're at that stage of taking action.
Yeah. And I wanted to reference something that Sarah said earlier, where you kind of go backwards a little bit, like in your goals. I think that for me personally, that is wonderful advice, because if you saw the goals that I write down, they're ridiculous. They might be too big, right? And so it's just like, okay, this is the ultimate goal, but I need to do 20 steps to get there. Okay, so my 20 steps, let's start from the beginning. Even if I just had 3 of those steps done in Q1, I'm still working towards my goal. So I think and this is actually hard for me it's hard for me to break down all the steps from one goal, but it's like just coming up with these little, like almost like mini goals, like chunks of, I got this piece done that's going to add to the next 3 steps. And then holistically, you still feel productive. And I think that that's an important piece of the pie for me as well. It's like feeling like I didn't accomplish my giant goal yet, but I'm feeling productive because I can look back and see these pieces that I've defined and accomplished already. So that's, yeah, I love that.
You
I love feeling productive.
Well, and to what you were pointing to, Monique, it reminded me the other thing I told my client this morning, reminded her of, is when you are trying to accomplish something and you're feeling overwhelmed in a day, it's like either the night before or that morning, choose just one thing you want to accomplish that day. And I said, build up to 3. Personally, I like to pick 3 things I want to accomplish today. And then I feel like I have an accomplished day. If you try to just look at that list, you will feel overwhelmed no matter what. And we will all die with a list. Let's just be realistic. But with that said, I also want to say that with those things that you're choosing, this is why, Monique, you reminded me of this, is when you're choosing these things, I said to her, and I say to you, don't say, I want to build a website today.
Exactly.
Say,
Totally unrealistic.
print the copy for the about page. Like, you have to whittle those things down. And a lot of times our to-do lists do have these big things, or our goals do have these big things. But yes, have the big thing. That's the big vision, right? Now take it down to like, okay, what's one step in that vision? And so if you didn't do that with your goals in 2025, when you were looking at 2026, make sure that you're pulling that list and now break it out. Because even by simply breaking that out, that might have your overwhelm just kind of viscerate, which would be amazing. So the last step here, you're still, like in the process, the last step here, and I think this is wisdom for us in any time of our lives. And actually, I feel like this entire conversation has to do with any time in our lives we're feeling overwhelmed, which is build in a buffer. So, this is, to me, life-proofing your business. Because life is going to happen, especially when you have kids or even have furry pets. You just never know what can happen. I literally have our 13-year-old dog poop in our dining room in the middle of work. And then that stench, I got to go take care of that. So with that, when there is poop in the dining room, you put these rigid buffers, rigid schedule on yourself and trying to get all these things done, you haven't built that buffer. So what I want to say with that is, like, anything that you are planning to do, build an extra 25 to 50% buffer time in there. So say like, oh, something's going to take me 2 hours. Say, okay, it's going to take me 3.5 because you may have poop in the dining room. So, and I'm trying to say that so serious right now. And to operate in bare minimums. This has been a very big wisdom thing for me that I've learned from others, because I would run very bare minimum, like, and then compact everything in that. Anyway, how do you guys build buffers or think about buffers?
I do this every week, Sunday nights or Friday afternoon, depending on how I'm feeling. And I know I've said this before, so it's a little bit redundant, but I sketch my week out. I put the things that can't move in it. And then there's wiggle room in between the things that can't move. And so within that few hour wiggle room, I might, suddenly my cat pooped in the living room and I can go clean that up. It's okay because I have the wiggle room. And so that it's super basic, but that's really how I plan every single week.
I think it's the difference between getting mad at the animal and not, because you won't get mad if you're like, okay, I buffered time for this poop. All animals have behavior issues. Anyway.
That's hilarious. I want to get better at doing what Monique does. And for me, especially when it comes to indigo elephant, I like honestly doing some of my stuff on Sundays. I like using that Sunday to get my content out for the following week. So then when I'm doing my life during the week, I'm not like, oh my God, I didn't post to LinkedIn. I didn't do this kind of thing. And so I like to have a day where I plan, and I also like the day to rest where I'm not available to clients. I'm not doing anything for my business. I may make a note if I get inspiration, but knowing I have those breaks and having out of office time just throughout the year helps me not fall into that trap of burning out because I'm just working all the time nonstop, or I'm overwhelmed because I feel like I'm not doing anything because what I'm doing is busy work.
That is amazing. And I think that we are now walking away with a lot of really beautiful ways for you guys all to move forward. I know I'm feeling inspired by all of this because I am fully aware that we all are vulnerable to overwhelm, and this is really supportive. So with that said, Sarah, give us some last tips.
Yes, it's a reminder that if January isn't going how you want, that does not mean you're not going to be successful. That means your business is crumbling to the ground. It just means things to be reassessed because you might be feeling differently about your goals than when you originally set them. Something new in your life happened. Maybe you got inspired to make a pivot. Allow yourself to have those human moments and to know that all you got to do is stop and discern, what do I actually want to do right now? And then from there, you can build your goals, figure out what you're doing per month or per week to make it achievable at the end of the year. And there's also nothing wrong too if you don't want to do something no more. That just means you're getting more aligned to something that's even better, even juicier than you can imagine. So just give yourself that permission to take a beat, go through the steps that we outlined in this, and I promise you will be really impressed by the end of the year of what you've done. And with that, we hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will talk with you next time.